Depends on the goal of your site. For emails, for example, we have the open rates, how many people open the emails, how many people see the email. That's if you guys load the images of an email, those images have tracking codes. And that means, well, basically they're measuring how many people are seeing the content. You can also look at things like conversion, and then conversion can be signups or purchases or, I don't know, subscriptions per page views. That's a typical measure. Other stuff is like global clicks, global page views. You can also measure more stuff, like performance. Sometimes we want to do a change, and then you don't know, okay, how is this change benefiting? Maybe use Wise law or page speed and stuff like that, and then you can see like, okay, this is some milliseconds better, but that's in your office with your ISP provider, but you don't know how it's performing in Japan or in Germany or in the US. So you could measure how long your website is taking for your customers, and then you can see if your idea for improving the performance is actually a success. Same goes for backend performance. You can actually measure errors, like, you know, we've got some buggy code and we want to update it, and then we just try the new one, and if the errors go down and then it doesn't affect our metrics, let's go for it. Or you can also look at something else like external impact, like for example, customer care tickets. How many calls is our call center getting? There's more stuff that you can do with A/B testing. You can try more than 2 variants. I just presented the basic example, which is the typical A/B, but you can have A, B, C, D, E. There's a famous example from Google where they have 40 shades of blue. I think this is a little bit overkill, but if you Google the internet, they have like these famous A/B tests, like, oh my god, we tried 40 shades of blue. It's like, okay, wow. I'm curious to see the results. You can actually use A/B test not just to 50-50%, but you can use it 99-1%, and then that 1% gets the new feature. That's something that Facebook does sometimes. Like they test new features with a really reduced group of users, and then they gather early feedback. So then people start screaming, like, oh my god, Facebook changed the design, let's kill them, blah, 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 blah. They are doing one of these tests. Dangerous code, that's something that you can also use. Sometimes when you release new features, let's say there's new database queries, or you're using a new backend, you're not sure what the impact that will be on your data center, for example. Is the load going to increase on our servers? Are we going to have trouble? You can start with 1% of the people, for example, 10%, 5%, whatever you want, and then you put it live, and then you monitor and see how it goes. If things don't explode, then you can ramp it up. You can go 10, 20, 30, until you can do 50-50, and it's like, hey, we're good. Let's go for 100%. This is something that can be useful as well. It depends, of course, on how your site is implemented, your architecture. But you could have, well, I call it graceful degradation or emergency switches. But let's say, an example, imagine that Facebook, they have their messaging system, they have it in a data center, and that data center goes completely down. There's no mirror data center, so it's totally down. Then people, when they click messages, the clients will start doing requests, which are failing. What Facebook could do is put an experiment for all the users saying like, okay, when this experiment is on, our code is not going to make any request. Then we're going to display a message, this service is not available. You could do stuff like, for example, in Amazon, there's a lot of information on a product page. What you could do is, if your servers are having trouble, you can enable an experiment that reduces the queries to the database, and instead of presenting all the data, you show a subset of it. You just show the photos, the description, that's it. You forget about the reviews, you forget about the other products people browsed or people's product purchased, and then you can alleviate the problems of your backend. This is something interesting, AA experiments. In these tests, you split the traffic, but there's no difference whatsoever. This is used for different purposes, but mainly is used for a sanity check. Sometimes we want to measure or check that our A/B testing framework is accurate. Are we assigning users randomly to the variance? That's really important. Are the results making sense? If, for example, I would run an A/B test, there's no difference. And it would show me that one of the variants is significantly better or worse than the control, then there could be something going wrong. We could have a problem with our backend, and we should check it. We could have false positives. All this A/B testing, when you're looking at A/B testing results, it relies on the statistics, and then we can have false positives. That's something to bear in mind. Okay, is it good? Yeah. Are there any questions so far? By the way? Okay, you guys are falling asleep. I'll try to make something. Anyway.
These experiments can be useful again for checking your framework. It's really important, and I'll talk about it in a bit, that your results are trustworthy. And you cannot trust your results, then you're wasting time. You need to have whatever your framework is, whatever your solution, whether you use Google's content experiments or, I don't know, Amazon or Optimizely, these guys need to provide you trustworthy data. Otherwise, you're going blind, and then you're probably making wrong decisions. This introduced me nicely to what I wanted to talk about, interpreting the results. When we talk about A/B test results, we talk about conclusive or inconclusive results. This actually means like we're confident that one of the variants is statistically significant. And what the fuck is that? Basically what it means, we can confidently say which one is the winner. When you do A/B tests, be really careful when looking at the results, because you have to be certain that if you see that one of the variants is a winner, you have to be really certain that that's true. I'm not a statistician, and it's outside the purpose of this talk, but it's really good to read upon this. Like, I think you guys should, if you're interested in the topic, read more about how to interpret results of A/B tests, because sometimes you can make wrong decisions. There are false positives sometimes, and you might think that you're having an impact while you are not. Let me show the example. This is, I like this reporting tool. This is the Amazon solution for their Kindle OS apps. You can have their SDK to do A/B tests in your Kindle OS apps. And then in the results, you've got the variation data control and then 2 changes. And then you see that the conversion rate changes. And when you do an A/B test, you can see, like, of course, metrics will change. You might get some clicks in one variant. You'll get more clicks on the other variant. But then, is that significant? Is it a significant change? Can I assume safely that this is the winner variant? Because sometimes, yeah, you get more clicks, but it's not enough to say, like, this is the winner for sure. They provide something here, like, well, this is the total conversion rate. This is the change compared to the control. Like this is 35.78 higher than the base, and this is 47. And then here, the confidence interval is what is going to tell you, like, this is the winner, or it's a neutral result. In this case, both things, both results, both variants have the check. The confidence interval is above 95. It depends on how you, like, sometimes you can use 90, 85. Sorry, this is a little bit complex. But in this case, we are confident enough that these 2 variants are having an impact on our side, and we should go for either of these. I would go for the last one. When you get neutral results or inconclusive, that's tough to make a decision because you are not sure what's the impact. It might be better, it might be worse, but you don't know. In this case, what happens is that the effect is too small to be measured. You cannot really see a difference. Usually, on these cases, you can look at secondary metrics and then other things. Like, let's say if you work for Amazon, your primary goal is to sell more, like more purchases. But then maybe your experiment is not making a change there, but you could be getting more people to check more items. You could get less errors. Like we were talking before about measuring errors. Maybe your experiment is not having an impact, but it's making the users face less errors. I would say that's also a reason to put an experiment full on. Also, sometimes you just aim for neutral. When you do a refactor and you are not sure whether that refactoring is going to help, you can just test it, and if it's neutral, hey, it's not having an impact, it's having the same measure as the base, let's go for it, because it's a refactor, it's going to help us develop features. Again, talking about trustworthy data, there's a lot to read upon this topic, and I want to make it really short here because I could be talking for hours. But again, make sure that the data that you're looking at is accurate. Examples of things that can screw up your data. Robots. We've seen it at Booking, and I think everybody has seen it. There's a paper I'm going to share with you, by the way. It's from some guys, I think they were at Microsoft, and they had the same problems. Like, you know, robots can hit your site, and they can get more visitors in one variant, for example. Let's say that for 2 hours you run an experiment for a week, and one day for half a day you had a robot hitting one of the variants. That means you're getting a lot more of page views for that variant, therefore your conversion rate is going to drop. When you look at the results, you will say like, oh yeah, the variant is doing much worse. But what is happening is like probably they're doing the same, but because you got a robot hitting your variant, that is screwing up your metrics. Also, some robots can parse JavaScript. You have to be really careful with these and try to filter them out, because otherwise they can really have an impact. Interfering experiments. This is an interesting one. Sometimes when you do a lot of experiments, you can have ones that are influencing each other. Maybe the two experiments by themselves are not having an impact. It's like, okay, it's fine. But the two together actually make a difference. So I took the same example from before, and let's say that one team decided to change the color to green for whatever reason, and another team decided to move the button, and they are not aware that their experiments are conflicting. Now, it could be that this is the winner variant, green and this position, but we don't know. We need something in our tools, or at least we shouldn't run them together, but we should have a way of detecting like, hey, these two experiments are influencing each other. Tracking. Am I going too fast? Are you guys any questions? Okay. When people visit your site, you want to assign them to your experiment buckets. That's what we call tracking. Putting users in your experiment. If your tracking is not accurate, then you'll have wrong data. And again, we come to the scenario where you cannot measure the impact. It's really important that your randomization, like you have to split the traffic randomly. It is very important that works very well. If your randomization is not accurate, then your results are not gonna, the visitors distribution will not be the same. Like if you divide people 50%, 50%, you should have 50 point something, 49.9 something, but it should be equally distributed. If you have like 40%, 60% when you were expecting 50-50, probably there's something wrong with your tracking. You should fix it. So a lot of times in Booking, it happened to me that I screwed up the tracking, and then I get head disks. And I like this picture. She reminds me of my product owner when she's like, hey, you know, the results don't look good. And I'm like, oh, God, what have I done? I have screwed up again. I want to talk now about tracking. Like, usually, when you have A/B tests, the typical examples you find is a whole page redesign. And that's fine. But with those tests, what is the driver for the improvement? Like, we just changed the form here, we added some images here, we added this here. Could be the images, could be the form, could be something else. You don't know. Usually at Booking we try to make small changes, and when you do A/B tests, you should put people in your experiment when they see the change. That means if I want to make a change, for example in Amazon, if I change the product page, and then I show more photos of the item, but I assign users to the experiment in the header, which is included on every page, I'm having an insane amount of visitors, but the ones that are seeing the change is just a little portion of those visitors. What happens is that I get noise in my experiment. That means it needs to run for longer. Because if you want to detect the impact, you need to let it run for really long until those users do make a difference. So when you're tracking experiments, try to only do it when people are actually seeing the change. And then we're going to talk about some challenges, because sometimes, you know, the change can be just copy, which you can do on the server side. Okay, so when you're rendering the page, show this copy, otherwise show that. But it can be something that when people click on a button, we show a light box. Now, in that case, the way you put people in your A/B test is different, and it can get more tricky. Avoid noise, as I mentioned. Otherwise, you need to run experiment for longer. This is I have screwed up. I don't track all the variants. I forget one variant. I do my checks, and then when I look at the results, I see visitors in variant, I don't know, in control, but I don't see in the variant 1, or vice versa, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? And obviously, I forgot to include people in the experiment. I've been looking at solutions outside in the market, and there are solutions based on JavaScript. There are solutions based for the server side. Both. I think there was one solution that I found interesting. I think a solution that combines both is the most powerful one. The solutions with JavaScript, they can be, of course, it depends on the purposes of your website and what kind of A/B testing you're doing, but I find them more limited. So I would consider having a solution that includes both server-side and JavaScript solutions. For the workshop, we're going to do some exercise. We're going to code some little framework to do tracking based on JavaScript. That is, for example, people that click on buttons and we open a light box. People that we can, if you guys are up to it, we can try to do people that actually see an element when they scroll. So as they scroll the page, they see an element. So then we're measuring we're actually putting into our experiment the users that actually saw the change, and then we're going to also talk about the challenges of using this approach. I find this tracking very powerful because, again, the example, when people click on a button and we show a light box, we can change the contents of the light box. If 5% of the people click on that link and we tracked when they open the page, we would have 95% of the users that are not seeing our change, and then only 5% of the people are seeing the change. That's why this tracking is really powerful, because you can be really, really precise. The problem is that, as everything, it comes with a downside. Like, this tracking is sensitive to JavaScript errors, and this is a funny situation that happened to me in the past. Solutions that request tracking pixels, like I don't know, analytics or other frameworks that are out there. If you have multiple scenarios where you can request a tracking pixel, and you start launching those requests at the same time concurrently, it might happen because these requests usually modify your cookie. If they are done at the same time, you might have cookie overrides. Like, yeah, this user has seen this change. Oh yeah, at the same time he has seen this other change and this one, but then the three go more or less at the same time, and then depending on the server latency, it could be that we lose information. And this is something we're gonna do in the coding as well. I looked at the market to see what's out there. At Booking, we have our homebrewed solution. Unfortunately, it's not open source. It's really tailored to the Booking needs. So I could not share it. But I was looking at the market and see what's out there. And these are some examples. Google Content Experiments, what used to be Website Optimizer. I have to say that Website Optimizer had the problem that the page would load and then the JavaScript would decide to switch parts of the site, which again, it's not really. It can have problems if you have JavaScript errors or or the network the network latency is really high, then the JavaScript is not loading, and then the user might be seeing content, might start interacting, but then your testing JavaScript is not there, and maybe the change is not shown. The nice thing is that now they have a server-side solution. You can just include it, and then you can switch things on the server. So you can just choose what to display when you render the page. I can show this blog. I can show that other blog. It has integration with Google Analytics, which I think every one of us has used. And the reporting is quite cool. You have the e-commerce, you have the page views, you have the technologies, everything. So I think it's a good solution to start with. Optimizely, it's grown very popular lately. I think it's good, but again, it's a solution based on JavaScript. So the page loads, then you have your JavaScript running, and then your JavaScript modifies the contents of the site. It works, but I think it's better if you have full control. Like for me, my experience, total control of the A/B test gave me a lot of flexibility, and I could do